to India and Ireland, round Africa and back again. We don't really need to know just where we'll go. Maybe Canada, then to Brazil, then through the Alpine foothills. All I really want to know is, can we go? Oh baby, can we go? Round and around the globe.
Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 88. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
This summer, we are doing a series where we are watching travel shows.
Yes, we are.
And I think this is our 5th week.
I think that sounds right. I think so. Something close to that anyway.
So this week, we watched An Idiot Abroad.
Yes, we did. And Cheryl, remind me, had you seen this show before?
I had seen the first 2 episodes of season 1.
Okay.
I think it was on Netflix for a while.
Yes, I think that's where I saw it
Okay.
originally, was on Netflix.
So yeah, I watched a little bit of it. It didn't stick, but and now watching it again, I kind of saw why it didn't stick, but I like it.
Yep, that's a really convincing review right there.
Yeah. So I don't know the main guy in this, but I mean I know Ricky Gervais.
Yes.
So do you know him?
I mean, I've never met him,
Oh.
but Carl, and I always say his last name wrong. I want to say Plinkerton, but that's not it. But it's those
Is it
syllables
Pilkington?
rearranged. That sounds right.
I had a friend in elementary school with that last name, so I know
Okay.
that last name.
There you go. So he is a friend of Ricky, and I think the other guy's name is Steven. And they work together. And I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think Carl is connected to anything else other than he's a friend of theirs. And
Oh.
I think that's the way it started. So season 1, so that we watched from season 2, but there's season 1, season 2, and then there's something about season 3, and I haven't seen anything in season 3. Season 1 is themed on the 7 wonders of the world. And so Ricky and Steven send Carl on these adventures around the world to visit the 7 wonders of the world. And the thing is, the reason they picked Carl is because he doesn't really like to travel much. He's not, how do we describe this? He's not a super positive person.
No, he's a grump. He is just a grump.
Oh, now
my
I understand
goodness.
why it didn't stick for you.
Oh my goodness. He's the opposite of me.
He is the opposite of you, Cheryl.
I think everything
totally
is wonderful and amazing and just so many. He could criticize anything or say, why do
he
people
does.
do that? Why? Like everything is,
Yeah.
a
So that's-
bad situation for him.
Which is, I think that's part of where some of the charm of the show comes from, because it is so counter to what most people would experience. And I think
Yes.
that's what they were going for. It is a British show. So it also has kind of that British humor slant, which sometimes hits for Americans and sometimes doesn't.
Yeah.
I think. And so that's part of what gives the show its feeling and its kind of style, I think. And it's very interesting because part of what I don't care about it is they intentionally try to be cruel to him. They put him in situations that they know he's not going to necessarily enjoy.
For example, they tell him, we're going to send you to the Great Wall of China, which oh my gosh, what an amazing experience.
cool.
This show is going to send you there.
Yeah.
And then they make him like walk a ton of it, and they set him up with like a really painful massage place. And
Yep.
they just put him in these situations that they know purposefully he won't enjoy, or they find like a negative slant on something that a lot of
Yes.
people would enjoy.
Yes.
And then they try to frame it. And this is what I love about the show is you hear these voicemails coming in from Ricky
Yep.
throughout the
Voicemails,
show.
which sometimes they actually call as
Yes.
well. But yeah.
And he's like, well, you were so great that we thought we'd send you to this place. And he makes it sound like it's going to be a really great experience. And you know that they're just going to torture him.
Oh, that's so funny that that's what you love. I hate that part. Because I feel like they're just lying to him.
I like
don't
the
know.
humor behind it. I think it's very
Yeah.
funny the way he
That's really
delivers that.
funny.
But I think Ricky Gervais is just hilarious. So
Oh, he is.
I
And
love him
he
a lot.
has so much fun on this show, which he's giddy and giggles and
Yes.
all of which is kind of funny. Anyway, so that's season 1. We didn't watch season 1. We watched season 2, where season 2 is all about bucket lists. And so somehow I don't remember if they researched it or whatever, but they got a list of the top 100 things that most people want to do before they die. And then they gave the list to Carl and let him pick which ones he was the most interested in doing.
Which is a fun slant on it again.
It
I like that.
It is giving him some of that flexibility. But then they still do kind of that thing where they give him different sorts of experiences that are maybe not what you would want to do, even if that was a bucket list item for you.
Yeah. Yeah, they're still cruel to him. And this is where, I mean, obviously Ricky just knows what this guy is like and that there's a lot of stuff that he says he's not going to do that he does. But I want to see the
Yes.
contract for this show because there are so many times where he's like, I'm just not going to do this. And then he does it. So, like, is he
Yeah.
contractually required to do it? Or is it just his personality that he says he's not going to do
Yeah.
stuff, but really he's going to do it?
Sure. I think that might be some of it. I seem to remember, not in the episodes that I watched for our podcast today, but in episodes I've watched before, I think I remember in some of those phone conversations or voicemails or whatever, when Carl's talking with Ricky basically says, you have to do it for the show. Like, we don't have a show if you don't do this. Like, I'm counting on you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that might be a component.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But the show is very interesting, and they go to very different places and they see a lot of
Yeah.
things. One of the reasons why we're not doing season 1 is because, Cheryl, when you and I looked at the list of all of the things, we recognized that neither of us have been to any of the 7 wonders of the world.
I know. Isn't that crazy? And when I think
Yeah.
about my travel goals, I don't think about the 7 wonders, but it makes
Mm-mm.
me question, do I need to add some of those to my list?
Yeah. So just because I feel like we can't say this and then not actually talk about them. So there's the Great Wall of China, which you
Mhm.
referenced, the Taj Mahal, Petra, which I actually would really like to go to Petra, Chichen Itza, the pyramids, Christ the Redeemer, the big statue in Brazil, Machu Picchu, and there you go.
So we've covered 3 on our podcast.
We have,
So that's
which
pretty
is not
cool.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cheryl, which episode did you watch that was something? And obviously these are not necessarily locations as much as experiences, because they're
Mhm.
things to do before you die. So which one did you watch?
I watched the swimming with dolphins episode. So you
Okay.
and I decided, Ryan, that we would pick bucket list types that we have done, and then we picked one together that we haven't done.
Correct.
So kind of following what we've been doing with these travel shows. This was a little different. So I swam with dolphins in Mexico with my mom and my sister Katie. My family went to Los Cabos for a vacation, and then my parents booked that for us. It was just a touristy thing. So like when I picture swimming with dolphins, I think I picture being like in the ocean and dolphins just come and hang out with you. Or kind
Yeah.
of like the our Baja episode where was it Ashley
Yep.
talked about swimming with, was it whale sharks?
Yep.
And they just hung out. And they're like,
Uh-huh.
maybe they'll be near you, maybe they won't. And I think that's what I pictured. But
Yeah.
and I don't know what other swimming with dolphin experiences are like, but mine was at a place that looked like SeaWorld, kind of, or smaller.
Okay.
And they were in like a tank. essentially, or a big pool. And then we had on a wetsuit, and they taught us 3 different commands to do with our arms. And then we went out in the water one at a time, and they said, all right, do the first command, and you do it, and then they do the thing. So one was to kiss you on the cheek, and one was to, one of them was something with a hug maybe, and I'm not quite remembering. And then the other one was 2 of them would come if you put your arms out, and you would hold their their fins on their
dorsal
back.
fin, yeah.
And that you would like not ski behind them. They would pull you.
That's so cool.
And that was amazing. And
I've always wondered if that's like an okay thing. Like from the dolphin health perspective.
I have no idea.
I don't.
They
I don't
are,
either, but it looks cool.
Strong. So okay.
Oh yeah.
We know that whales are strong, but and this is interesting because there are things that scare me and there are things that don't scare me, and this did not scare me at all. But I did the thing you like cross your arms across your chest, at least for these dolphins. And then it comes and it gives you a kiss on the cheek. And for me and just me, the dolphin kept swimming forward. Oh. And so I was pushed underwater and I was underneath its body. And I wasn't scared at all. Like I think it was one of those situations where like where the logical part of me felt very safe. And in that moment, that was enough for me. I think there's times when that's not enough and you can still feel emotionally scared. I think it was like, this is such a controlled situation. And this
you knew the dolphin wasn't trying to hurt you or anything.
Yeah. And it's not that big. So it's going to keep swimming over you and you're going to be able to get out. You know, it's not like something that's like going to keep covering the surface for a long amount of time. But I could feel like this dolphin is very strong and there is nothing I can do about this. And that was really interesting, realizing like it's just one big muscle. And so it felt like its entire body was a muscle as far as like how strong it felt and everything, which is really interesting. So that was my experience with swimming with dolphins. So for this episode, it was hardly about that experience. It was mainly about a layover he was on.
A layover?
Which was kind of weird. So he doesn't like flying, which is one of the things he doesn't like about travel. And tell me his name again, Carl?
Carl, yeah.
Carl, thank you. So he picks the swimming with dolphins and he says, they cure ill people. And Ricky says, who says that? Because he was saying like, oh yeah, they say that they cure ill people. And he was like, no one says that. But he was kind of like, I don't know, it sounds whatever, but I guess I'll do it. And he was like, well, we're going to send you to Australia. And he was like, okay, let's go to Australia. And so, but he asks for a layover that's longer so that he can have a little bit of time between flights and not have to have as long of one giant flight. And so
Carl
he has
asks for this.
Yes. And so they have him stop in Thailand to break up the flight. And he's there for most of the episode. And
I think that is something that is not uncommon in a lot of the episodes, is whatever the event is makes up a small portion of the whole episode.
Which then makes more sense why this is like an hour plus long show.
Yeah. Because
with the actual content, if he just did the bucket list item, it could be like a 22-minute show.
Yep.
So it was funny because it's so hard with a show to know, like, what is an actual surprise to him and what is he like? Is he faking? I don't know. But it seems like he does not know the logistics. He does not know where he's being sent. And then he just finds out and goes. So he was saying, I thought I was just stopping in Thailand for like a night. And then he's doing all these things in Thailand. And at the very end, he gets to Australia. So they have him hang out with what they call lady boys. And they dress him in drag. And so he like gets his nails done with him. And they like do his makeup and give him a wig and everything. They teach him blindfolded boxing. And then he goes and is like in a blindfolded boxing match. And then Ricky surprises him with a massage. But it's like a really, really painful massage. And they massage his butt and he's uncomfortable.
Sure.
And then he goes to a king cobra village.
What?
And he's freaking out, which I would be too. And
I'll
on the way
bet.
there, he's like, "How many are there?" And then he's like, "I mean, it's got to be a lot if it's a village." um, and he also says, I wrote this one down. I shouldn't be going in there. If I were on holiday, I wouldn't go there. The fact that we had to take medics with us is a warning that we shouldn't be going there.
Oh, jeez. Oh,
And there's a
jeez.
man who's holding the cobra and just clearly loves the snake that he's holding. But this man is missing a couple fingers. And so
Oh,
he's asking the
gosh.
man, like, through a translator, if he's missing if he's missing the fingers because of the cobra. And he says yes. And he's like, "And you still love it?" And he's like, "Yep."
Wow.
So he's freaking out about that. Then they take him to this chicken farm. I couldn't really tell, like, what was weird about it, but he went to a chicken farm. And he goes to a
Okay.
really weird museum, and he describes that one of the things he's looking at is the dead body of a murderer. And they
What?
just have, like, weird skulls and different things in this museum.
Okay.
And then he goes to what he calls Monkey Town, and this one was his choice. He wanted to hang out with monkeys,
Oh, I think I've heard of this.
and he just, like, got really annoyed with them. And he was like, "It's cute, like, when you see a monkey in a movie and it's, like, doing hijinks, and it's not so fun when they're, like, stealing your stuff and being mean to you and not listening to you."
Yeah.
So he was all grumpy about that. And then amongst the monkeys, he says, "Never do anything you want to do. Think of the things that you don't want to do, and that's most likely what you'll be happy with." Which is, like, maybe his life's philosophy.
Right? Except no, because he is doing the things he doesn't want to do also and is not happy.
Yeah. And then he gets
Oh,
to
man.
Australia, and Ricky leaves him a voicemail and tells him that there's a change of plans and that anyone can
Which
swim.
is not uncommon.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty common in this show. He says, anyone could swim with dolphins. It's not really that interesting or unique. So we're going to have you swim with sharks.
What?
And Carl is very nervous. And he gets on this boat and he has to spend the night on the boat. And then in the morning, he's going to
Oh.
swim with the sharks. And he's looking at this, like, cage that he's gonna be in, and he's like, "This
Uh-huh.
looks unfinished. Is this finished?" Because there's, like, a larger area, and they're like, "Yeah, this shark could, like, fit their nose in there, but that's fine."
Oh, jeez.
And then he's talking about how, like, comparing swimming with sharks to dolphins, and he's like, "It's the opposite. It's not similar. It's the opposite. It's the most dangerous thing in the world versus the friendliest thing in the world. Harmless, armless." So I like that line. And then the guy, as he's getting him ready, like, shows himself a picture of, like, when he got a ton of stitches from a shark bite, which is just, like, the worst thing to show someone
Yes.
before they're going to swim with sharks. And then he does it, and it's like 2 seconds of the episode and pretty anticlimactic. He just swims with the sharks, and
And then that's it. And that's the
and
end.
then that's it. Yeah. Although at one point on the boat, he hides in the bathroom and he's drinking some soup, and he says that that's making him far happier than anything else. And he was like, "This is pretty cool that I can just be happy with soup, and that I don't need all these, like, crazy things to make myself happy." So that was kind of like a sweet moment about contentment, maybe.
Well, and I do think that is something that is true about Carl, at least from what I've seen in episodes of him in the show, is that he is just happy with his regular everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And so going and doing all these other things and being other places where he's not familiar and has to do these extreme things, I think part of why he comes across as so grumpy is because it's not stuff that he generally actually wants to do. And so he's put in these situations where he doesn't want to do those things. And I think I've heard other instances where he talks about just wanting to be home, or if I was at home, I wouldn't be doing this, or those sorts of things. So
Yeah. I haven't read The Hobbit, but he sounds like Bilbo Baggins, maybe?
no.
Doesn't Bilbo not want to do adventures? Who
Mm,
doesn't want to do adventures?
Hobbits in general don't want to do
Okay,
adventures.
so he's just a hobbit.
Yes, I would say that he is a hobbit, more or less.
Okay, so maybe Carl's a hobbit.
I could see that. I could see Carl being
Okay,
a hobbit.
That's my current theory then.
Yeah.
So that was my episode.
Okay. So I think I already know the answer to this question. Do you feel like that matches your experience of swimming with dolphins?
Not at all. Quite the opposite. Even the actual part that they're actually in the ocean on a boat, even if it was a dolphin experience and not a shark one,
Yeah.
it's very different than my manufactured tourist experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I would swim with dolphins in the wild. I would not do the shark encounter. My sister swam with whale sharks, and then we had Ashley
Very
talk
different.
about it, and
Yeah.
I would maybe, I don't know, perhaps I would want to watch other people do it first.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to go in a cage and be in the water amongst sharks swimming around me. I don't need that type
Yeah.
of thrill.
Stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that if I would do it or not, to be honest. I think it would depend on a number of the circumstances going on around it. I'm not super cool in water, just in
Yeah.
general.
So you're already outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. So separate from the shark thing, and I don't know that I'm particularly scared of sharks, but if they were to do something like chum the water and put bait right by the cage, those sorts of things,
Mhm.
that I think I would be way less cool about.
Yeah.
And it depends on the type of shark too. Because if it's, say, like a tiger shark, or there are types of sharks that aren't great white sharks.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the great white I would be significantly less interested in.
Actually, I passed up a swimming with sharks experience technically.
Yeah.
When I was in second grade, my family went to Disney World, and we were at one of their like water parks, because they have a bunch of different parks at Disney World, and
Yep,
there's
yep.
a couple that are a water park essentially.
Yeah.
And my mom and my sisters did this thing where you could like snorkel through this area that had like tiger sharks or little sharks
Yeah,
in it, and
yeah.
a bunch of fish and other things. And I chose not to because I was
Mm.
scared of the sharks.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
as an adult, I would do something like that. They were
Yeah.
like a couple feet long. It'd
Yeah.
be fine.
Well, and actually, now that I think about it, a little over a year ago, when I was in the Galapagos Islands, there was snorkeling almost every day that we were there. Again, not a great swimmer, not super comfortable in the water. And then I couldn't get my stupid face mask to actually
suction?
seal.
Oh, that's the worst.
never have been able to get one to actually seal. Given enough time, water starts to leak in, and then I freak out and I'm done. And so it took me a while to get a system that would at least work a little bit. But there were times where some of the spots that some of the people had gone, there were sharks like swimming around. Then they got to see sharks and stuff. And I think as long as I could be comfortable enough in the water itself, I think I would be okay with that. I don't know that for sure, but I think so. I don't know. I would have
Well,
to
there
see.
we go.
There
So,
we go.
Ryan, which episode did you watch?
I watched episode 4, which was about whale watching. So similar kind of
Okay.
to dolphins, except what was funny was he went to Alaska, which was the episode that I watched last week.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to see another Alaska episode, which actually
that's
ended up being
funny.
kind of interesting to see the same, obviously not the exact same location, but similar type location, but with
Different
a very
show.
different show style.
Mm.
So that was kind of interesting. And it was being cruel to him, as is sort of
Oh,
the nature of the show. So it started where he had to pick up this big backpack and pull this sled, and he's hiking through, I mean, he said 5-foot snowbanks. They weren't 5 feet, but they were up past his knees.
Mm.
And he's hiking through, for whatever reason, they didn't have snowshoes. I don't know if that was not a thing. I don't know. But hiking with this guide who kind of kept just laughing at him, not in a cruel sort of a way, but just he was a super positive guy, that the guide was, and Carl was not. And he was cold and he was tired. And they get to this like shack that's kind of, I mean, it's not, shack is not the right word. It's like a little, like a tiny house, I guess, because it was very, very small, but there wasn't a lot to it. And he complained that what's the point of there even being a heater? Because it's not even, there's no actual, it doesn't work, doesn't actually do anything. And there was no bathroom, so he was supposed to go outside, and then the guide picked up a piece of snow that had been molded into a shape that could work as toilet paper. Carl was not keen about that. I'll just let you kind of picture that. I will say Carl he has some lines that are definitely funny. Right. At one point when hiking, he finally gets up and then they go down. The guide says something like, well, it's all down here from here. Carl's like, you're right. Since I've gotten off the plane, it's been downhill.
I mean, I think that's a big element that makes the show is his commentary is very good.
Yeah. Oh, and so they're in. I loved this, which was probably terrible. But they're in this little cabin thing, and somehow there's a guitar there. I don't know if it's always there or if the guide was hiking with a guitar, but he starts singing these songs, and the song it's sort of kind of like a love song kind of, but it's just a string of animal puns. So it's I really caribou you. And it ends with your salmon special to me.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just that. All of those. It was great. As a pun appreciator, I thought it was awesome. Fun. So that was pretty cool. Then he takes an ice road truck ride out to Barrow, Alaska, which is, I think, the northernmost point. So they're quite a bit farther north. And hangs out with two Inuit women. So it's kind of a mostly Inuit village, and he gets to meet these two older Eskimo women who Carl refers to as the Eskimo version of the Golden Girls. Which again, he's funny. He's not trying to be, but he's funny.
He's very funny.
Yeah. And he tries muktuk, which he tries to say it and he can't pronounce it, and I'm sure I mispronounced it as well, but it's bowhead whale. They can eat it fresh or frozen. And then he tries frozen caribou. And then one of the women takes him on a snowmobile up to Point Barrow, which is the farthest northernmost point, at least in Alaska. I think they said in the world. I don't know if that's true, but a very, very northernmost point that you can go. And he gets out there and he's like, what's the deal? It's the same as where we were. It looks the same. It doesn't look any different. And then he gets out and he's walking around, and it literally is just snow and ice, flat in every direction. And he says, I just thought there'd be more to it. That's all.
You know what? I can relate to that. When my family was in Alaska, we got to drive up past the Arctic Circle.
Oh, yeah.
And it looked the same. So it's a cool thing, like saying we've been past the Arctic Circle is pretty awesome, but it didn't look different. But also it was like in the summer and not as far north as that, I think. And so it was not snowy. It was just like, looked like a desert.
Well, and the cool thing about being north of the Arctic Circle in the summer is that the sun doesn't set. So there is something that looks different, but only at a particular time.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're not there at that time, it's not really going to look that different.
It just looked like kind of similar to what we had seen in other areas. And so, I could relate to that.
Yep. And then I thought all the things he was saying was funny because I wrote down a lot of them. Then he says, what's the point of this program being in HD? It's a waste even being in color.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah. And so let's see. Oh, then he helps with the honey buckets. And when I say honey buckets, what do you think of?
Like a bathroom with the little 4 plastic walls.
Yeah,
and
like a porta potty.
Yeah,
right?
porta potty. Yeah.
Yep. No, this is an actual bucket that they put their sewage in.
Oh, okay.
Their toilet waste.
All right.
It's an actual. Think of one of those 10-gallon buckets that you would get at Home Depot or something, and they put bags in them, but then they put them into those buckets, and then someone comes around and picks them up.
All right.
because they don't actually have sewage in some of those remote towns out there.
You
Which
seem
it's-
very not okay with this.
Well, first of all, it's gross. I mean, you have to do what you have to do. But I also feel really bad that they don't have plumbing of any kind out there. So hopefully there's a little bit more than he did. You would love the concept of this, Cheryl. In order to go to wherever they were going next, he got to do a dog sled.
Yay!
So he gets to see all these dogs and he gets on the sled and he hates it because it feels totally out of control and they're just going and he has no control and there's a brake. And so what's the point of the brake? The brake doesn't even do anything. And it's just, he's just frustrated the whole time.
Oh, that sounds so fun, though. I would love to go on a dog sled.
Yep.
We got to see some sled dogs when my family went to Alaska, and we got to go to this presentation that this former Iditarod competitor did and see her dogs and all of that. It was very cool. I would love to be on a dog sled. That sounds great.
Yeah. And then he goes to Prince William Sound to see a glacier.
Nice.
And he starts talking. And now I didn't write down the context, unfortunately, but he's talking about being energy efficient and having to do with like hair dryers and shampoo. And he talks about how he's super energy efficient because he's bald.
I mean, that's true. Yeah.
Yep. And then, so they get out into this sound and there's a huge glacier and there's, ice floating in the sound. And then he puts on this weird orange suit and then gets in this little Kodiak, like a little dinghy off of the boat. And they go out into the water and then he floats around in the glacier water in the sound. And he seems actually fairly content and happy. So whatever the weird orange suit, it must be an uber dry suit or something so that it's super insulated. So it's not super cold. And he just kind of floats there on his back and it's quiet and he seems incredibly content, which I think is really, really funny. And then comes the part where that's actually supposed to be whale watching, right?
Okay.
And similar to what you had in your episode where Ricky's like, well, I don't want it to be just the standard tourist thing. Instead of going on a whale watching boat, he goes out on a working fishing ship.
Oh, that's a little different.
It's quite a bit different. And he has to put on their overalls and jacket that they use when they're, cutting fish and stuff. And so he's grossed out by the fact that it smells like fish. And then they have him actually cutting octopus and doing the work inside the ship. And then he starts to get seasick.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. It's so sad. And he's like not feeling good. And I won't go into the details, but as someone who can get motion sick, even just watching it, I had to look away a few times because I didn't get like super sick necessarily, but there was some sympathy going on. I was like, I can't watch this because he was not doing good. And then they finally see whales.
Okay.
And he's so seasick that he doesn't even want to move to see, because he feels better when he's lying down where he can't see anything. And so he like sort of gets up a little bit to see and then just goes right back down again. And then a little bit later, they move. I don't know if they moved him to a different part of the ship where he was up higher and he can sort of see the whales, but he's so not feeling good that he is not excited about it at all.
Oh, that's so sad.
That's the end of the episode.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So, Ryan.
So, Cheryl.
Did this match your experience with whale watching?
Nope. Thankfully. Because it was definitely a tourist boat. And actually, when I did the Alaska cruise that we did, I think we saw whales from there too. But definitely not on a fishing ship. And I think I would have been right there with Carl if I was seasick, I wouldn't care that there were whales.
Yeah.
It's great. Good for them. Can I get off the boat yet, please? So, yeah, that made me sad.
Wow. So then we watched an
Yes.
episode together, but
We
apart.
did episode 6
Mm-hmm.
on Route 66.
Yes. Which is fun because neither of us have been on Route 66 and it's
No.
here in the US.
And I'm going to admit something that is kind of embarrassing. Apparently, I didn't know where Route 66 was
Oh, I don't think I did either.
because it starts in Santa Monica in California. That's where they start the episode. Because apparently that's where Route 66 ends. I didn't realize it came to the West Coast. I thought it was way farther east.
I mean, it makes sense that it
Oops.
does, but I had no idea either.
Nope.
Yeah.
Oops.
So that was funny. It was hilarious that he was annoyed at all the pigeons in Santa Monica and said, "You don't see these on Baywatch." I like that line.
Yes.
So, of course, he's not just going to drive on Route 66 and call it good.
No, really? But that's the sense I was getting from all the other episodes, Cheryl.
And so the first thing they have him do is join a glee choir and perform at a concert with them.
What I think is before this, doesn't he get his car?
Oh, yes. Yes. You want to talk about the car?
Yeah. So they had talked about getting a convertible because apparently that's the stereotypical thing that you do driving through Route 66. I didn't know this. And so they never actually give the brand, I don't believe, but I'm pretty sure it was a smart car
Yeah.
because it's like 2 seats, super squished, and it's convertible in that it doesn't technically have a top on it. But that's about it.
And then later he sees like an old classic convertible and he's like, "That's what I thought I was getting."
Yep.
So that was cute. Yeah. So then he goes and joins like a high school glee choir and they're like, I think it was also like, this is an American experience is glee. And they have him do a solo.
somehow.
And then he goes to a guy's house where there's all this like bottle art in his yard.
Okay, that part was weird. All of the bottle stuff. I thought it was art. Initially, it looked like a kind of an industrial art type of a thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
there are these big tall poles with metal kind of sticking out and bottles that were on it. But then he walked and there was a rowboat filled with glass bottles. So part of me
Yeah.
wonders if it was just their the things that I thought was art was actually just to dry the bottles. I'm not sure what it was. And he never sees a person there.
Yeah.
There's never a person. It was weird.
Yeah. And then it gets weirder.
Oh, yes, it does.
And he goes to a cuddle party,
Mm-hmm.
which
What he refers to as the hippie area.
yes, I mean it's got to be. And that was weird and I felt like they must have kept it way more G-rated than in reality. It just like I was expecting it to get dirtier and I was happy that it didn't, but it was
Well, have you heard of
weird.
these things, these cuddle parties?
no.
So first of all, we should probably say that this show is several years old. So series 1 or season 1 came out in November of 2010. And then season 2 was November of 2011 and series 3 was December of 2012.
Okay.
So this show is about 10 years old, 9-10 years old. And it must have been at that point in time, these cuddle parties were an actual thing that they would pop up. And I don't think they actually were intended to get any dirtier than just cuddling. Because clothes stay on and they were wearing
pajamas.
Yep. And it's just about being able to cuddle. And there were, So
and
I'd actually heard of this
hugged
before.
and then they spooned and he was not into
No,
it. And then
he didn't
also
hug, though,
he
did
has
he?
a girlfriend. So I was like, I mean, good for him because that would be weird for me, you know.
Yeah.
If you found out that your significant other was like spooning with other people. So yeah, he was just weirded out by that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's not my jam.
Yeah.
What his whole thing was, that they're strangers.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That was a good point. It was like might be different. He'd hug his friends, but not hug strangers.
Maybe. I don't get the sense that he's much of a hugger, though,
Yeah.
which is fine.
And then the next point I wrote down is just whale, and I'm trying to remember.
Uh-huh. I wrote down tourist trap.
Oh,
blue
yeah.
whale on a pond.
Yep.
And when I say blue whale, I don't mean that as the species of the whale. I mean as the color of a bright sky blue whale thing that has its mouth open, and you
go
can
inside
walk
of it.
through.
Yeah. And he was
Sorta.
just inside a whale.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know. I don't know the point of that.
Yep. So he went there, and then he
Yep.
went and went out with a gold prospector.
In Arizona. And they go to get there, they basically go off-roading,
Yeah.
but they do. If it was like it's in the movies, because they're going up and down hills, and this prospector decided to have a bunch of fun and go super fast up the hill so they fly off the ground and then bounce
Yeah.
and land down on the other side.
It looked like movie off-roading, not like the
It did.
off-roading I've experienced. Yeah.
It totally did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they like blow up a bunch of stuff to try to find gold.
Which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, that looked kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then monster truck was my next note.
Yep. Because then, so I think this was a Ricky call. I think. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but I think there was a Ricky call about how he feels bad about
the
him
car.
in the vehicle. So we arranged another vehicle for you. And it's a big giant monster truck. And Carl doesn't want to get in it, but whoever the monster truck driver is convinces him to get up in it. And then I was a little confused. I couldn't completely tell. It made it sound like there weren't actual seats in it or something, because
Yeah.
Carl was not cool with it at all.
Yeah.
And they started to drive around just in a circle, and they didn't even make it all the way around the circle. And Carl was yelling at the guy to like, stop, let me out. I don't want to
Yeah.
do this.
It seemed like
And
or maybe he didn't have his own seat or something.
Something. Yeah. I
don't
don't know
think
what
he
it
was
was.
buckled or had a spot, really.
Yeah, he was not. He
Yeah.
was not going for that at all.
And then I wrote down a quote.
Oh, good.
Route 66 is meant to be about freedom, but it's not. It's just one road. And I think he was saying, like, you don't get to choose. You don't get multiple lanes or different routes. It's just like you go on this one road and you keep going.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I think he was just getting bored, probably, too.
Well, because I did finally look it up to get an image of exactly and Route 66 is long. So I wasn't completely wrong in thinking it covered the eastern part, not the eastern coast, but a good part of kind of the middle of the country, and then on the eastern half, I guess. But it does come all the way to California. And he must have been driving for quite a while.
Yeah.
Because it would take, I don't know how long it would take to drive that whole thing. At least a week, I would think, especially with the stops that they were making.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I could see that taking some time and him getting bored
Yeah.
by himself driving.
And then he meets an Amish family and stays with them at their farm.
Yep, in Indiana.
And that was
Which-
so sweet.
I really, yeah, I liked it. I think Carl actually liked it as well. And his quote that I wrote down for how he described it was, "They've got it right. It's just the beard that's daft."
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was like, I don't know how you could pull off that beard, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so that was really sweet, and they try to like give him something for his girlfriend, because part of his storyline was that she wants him to bring souvenirs and he never really knows what to get her.
Right.
So he wanted to get her gold, but they didn't actually find any gold. And then
Right.
they give him like a jar of peas. And they're like, "Oh, don't give these to your girlfriend. They're mushy." He's like, "She likes mushy peas. That's fine." And it was so cute.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Yeah.
Next, I wrote down a quote about the American dream, because he's talking about
Oh.
Americans
This might be the same quote I wrote down. You go ahead and read yours, and then I'll read mine.
He said, "Your dreams should never be better than real life."
Unless you're a sloth.
I want to like needle point that onto something because that
Right?
was
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was a good point, and I think he was like trying to get there with the analogy of a dream versus real dreams. But he's just talking
Yeah.
about like Americans and their idea of what their dreams are, and that he didn't
Yeah.
really agree with it. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I appreciate that perspective, because there's, on one level, I think here in the United States, we're constantly told to shoot for your dreams and try new things. And I think that's led to a lot of innovation that we have in the United States.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, the flip side is that it's led to discontentment.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't get what you're striving for, which that's the way life works, sometimes you don't. So I think that there's some validity in the idea that you shouldn't necessarily want more than what you have, or at least you should be able to be content with what you have.
And that goes back to his theme of contentment, which I think
Yep.
he really seems to think about when he's on these trips.
Yeah.
Is kind of like, you don't need to go out and do all these things. You could just be content with your life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting idea.
It is.
So then they decide that he's
Oh.
not getting there quick enough. And they want him to see the end of Route 66. And so they
Mhm.
decide, well, we'll just fly you the rest of the way there.
Mm-hmm.
You look upset about this already.
I am upset about this.
So he's saying, well, Ricky knows I don't like planes, and now he wants me to fly there. And then they show the plane he's going to take,
Mhm.
and it looks like
It's a
it looks like the
biplane.
Wright brothers invented this plane.
I mean, a little more recent than that, but
it is, yeah, a tiny,
it's a biplane.
tiny, yes.
Yeah, one of
And
those two-seaters,
not
front and
only,
back.
yeah, is it, but he's going to have a seat on top, and the man says that he'll get the best view up there.
Yeah.
And so he says, well, I'm just not going to do this. And then Ricky tells him, well, you have an alternative, and it won't be more embarrassing than Glee.
That's right.
So they say
I
that he
didn't
was
even
it a
write that part
strip
down.
club? Was that it?
No, it was, the alternative was the Mr. Leather contest.
Oh, okay. That's why I wrote down strip club.
Strip club.
And that he could do that. So then he gets on the plane.
Yeah.
And then Ryan got motion sick by proxy again.
Not so much the motion sick, although that's probably a thing too. So basically what happens is he gets in this plane, and it's one of those two-seaters, right, where they're right in front of each other. And he's actually in the front seat, and then they get up, and then he climbs out of the seat and climbs onto the top of the two wings for the biplane, right? Because they go across the whole plane, and he climbs onto the top one. And there's I don't know, like a metal kind of structure that he can be attached to. So he's not just freestanding, but he is standing on top of the wing while it's flying. And then they start doing loop-de-loops and spinning.
Corkscrews
And
as well. Tight corkscrews.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And the way I like to describe it is, I don't have a fear of heights. I have a fear of falling from heights. And so as long as there doesn't seem to be any indication that I might fall, I'm good. I went up to the top of the Eiffel Tower, no problem. I can go over to the edge of the Grand Canyon and look at it, no problem. And I know that there are people who can't do those things. You know, it's just too high, it's too scary for them. But you put me in a place where it looks like or feels like I'm going to fall, and I am not interested. And that is a perfect example of that. No. And he was not happy either. He was screaming and name calling.
Mm-hmm.
And he was clearly not having any fun at all.
Yeah. And that was the end of the episode.
And right? It just ends on these like terrible low points.
I mean, it is on theme for it to end
It is
like
on
that.
theme.
Yeah, I think this show knows who it is. So
Oh, it definitely does.
So Ryan, I have a question for you.
Yes, Cheryl.
Based on the title of our podcast, Take Me With You,
Yes.
if you could take yourself to just one thing from this episode, what would it be and why?
Oh boy. Well, I think I would probably go visit the Amish family because that would be a really cool experience to get to meet them and talk to them and see what their life is like. It seems to me like on TV programs and things, you get an image of what it means to be Amish, but I've never actually had any direct experience with Amish people or knowing really what that culture is like. And that could be a really interesting cultural opportunity to learn a little bit more about them firsthand.
I like that.
What about you?
I have a couple choices. My first one would be Santa Monica.
Well, I had thought about that too. I don't know if that counts.
I would be happy to sing with the Glee choir. That sounds like
You
a
would.
lot of
That's
fun.
true.
Yep.
That's true.
I would be interested in just driving on part of Route 66. That just sounds like a fun American road trip experience. I
Yeah.
would love a picture with the whale. And I don't think I would stand on the plane, but I would ride in that plane.
I think the two have to go together there, Cheryl.
Mm,
At least that's the way it was for Carl.
yeah. I don't think I would do that then necessarily. I might if I was in a TV show though. So, but yeah. So Ryan, did
So,
this
Cheryl.
episode make you want to go to Route 66 more than before watching this episode?
No, not really.
Yeah, that's fair.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think that, that's kind of the point of the show, but like the attractions that they represented made me feel like, oh, I could skip that and never go to Route 66.
Yeah.
When in reality, I'm sure that you could make a lovely road trip out of that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think that that's probably the show being successful as well.
I think you're right.
And based on the show overall, I'm going to ask you two questions.
Okay.
The first question is, would you want to travel with Carl?
So I've been thinking about this, and it depends. It depends, I think. Would I want to travel with Carl in the way that he's traveling in this show? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Would I want to travel with Carl if Carl got to choose exactly what he did and how and actually had the autonomy in it? Maybe. Because I think a lot of the things that Carl is not interested in, I am also not interested in. And so I think we may be a little bit of a kindred spirit in that component. He is not interested in doing extreme, crazy, out there things. And I am, for the most part, not interested in doing crazy, extreme, out there things either. And he is funny.
Yeah. And he seems like he doesn't get the hype behind certain things. And I think that sometimes that's you. There's certain things where you're like, I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal about this? Yeah.
Mona Lisa, I'm looking at you. Yeah.
My second question, I already know the answer to this. Would you want to take a trip that Ricky Gervais planned for you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No way. I don't care if it's on TV. I don't care if you're paying me. No, absolutely not. Okay. Same questions for you. Would you want to, and I think I know the answers to these as well. Would you want to travel with Carl?
No.
He's too negative for you, isn't he?
He's too negative.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things where even if it was overhyped or even if it's like if something goes off, I want to be positive about it. I want to enjoy the positive aspects of it. I don't want to just sit and complain about it. I don't get enjoyment. I think some people get enjoyment about like trash talking things, and I just don't. So I think I would be bummed. Yeah, that's true. Unless it's The Bachelor, but yeah, yeah. So I don't think I would want to travel with him. Yeah.
And would you want to go on a trip that Ricky Gervais planned?
Um, if it were for a TV show, yeah, I would do it. Like I would do one
Yeah.
of these trips and do these weird things that he was doing. I think it'd be hilarious. If it were just me, I don't think so.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, and I'm sure that you can see this as well, is, and I think partly why the show appeals to me at least somewhat, is I identify with Carl. And I
Mm.
think if I were in his position, I would be just as negative.
Mm.
I would be just as frustrated. I would be just, if I was forced to do all of these things that I had no interest in,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think he has more of an overall negative outlook, at least from what we see. And obviously it's a TV show, so they're
Yeah.
giving us a very specific thing than I would at least like to think that I have in general.
Mm-hmm.
But you put me in those same situations, I'm going to be just as grumpy as he is.
I think you're right. I think you would be.
Yep.
But I'm guessing that he is overall negative, and that's probably why they picked him for this show. Especially if he's one of Ricky's
yeah.
friends. Like,
I
I'm
think
sure
you're
that
right.
that was the reason.
Yeah.
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 So, would you recommend this show?
I think it depends on the person. I think if you like British humor, if you like, and it's not technically dark humor, but it's more in that dark humor vein, I think. And if you aren't bothered by people being semi-tortured
Mm-hmm.
and not, in a physical torture necessarily sort of a way, then I think you could enjoy the show. You do get to see some really cool things, and it definitely isn't just the tourist attractions. And so you do get to see some different sides of whatever country or culture or whatever that it goes to. And in that sense, I think that there can be some enjoyment from it. And like you said, Carl can be funny. Like the quotes that he has, you and I both wrote down things that he said because they're funny. And there are definitely some funny parts of the show. But for example, like my mom, I do not think my mom would like this show.
Mm.
Have you seen the movie What About Bob?
Yes.
Do you like that movie?
Yes.
My mom hates that movie because she hates that Richard Dreyfuss's character is constantly in this position where nobody understands what's really going on, and he is constantly dealing with this
Also,
stuff.
it just frustrates her.
It frustrates her like crazy. And I think this show would do the exact same thing to her.
Okay.
Right? Where this guy is having all this stuff done to him and it's not his fault and he's in these bad situations. And I think she would just get frustrated. So if anyone is like that, I don't think they would enjoy the show at all. Would you recommend the show?
Yeah. I would say check it out. I think there are times when people, or like myself, don't always know how they're going to react to like a negative experience because it depends on so many other elements.
Yeah.
But it's funny. And this is the
funny.
first, I was thinking about this. This is the first and maybe the only comedy travel show we've watched.
Well, 48 Hours is pretty funny.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's true. Actually, you're right. There's a bit of an overlap there. I'd say that was the
With
most
Travel
similar.
Man.
And British humor, which
Yep.
is great again.
Yep.
But
it's a very different type of show.
Yeah, this is the most disrespectful about other cultures and
Sure.
and so I
Yeah.
think you have to be fine with that, but it's really funny. And if you're okay with Carl being tortured, knowing that he's probably
Yeah.
making a fair amount of money from it and signed a
Yeah.
contract and
Yeah.
ultimately probably knew what he was getting into and signed up for a second and third season, then,
Yeah. Yeah. You originally said that when you had seen 2 episodes, I think,
Yes.
prior to us having done this, and it didn't stick. And
Yeah.
now you're recommending that people watch the show.
Yeah,
Did
because other
something
people
change?
might, and like for me, I'm not going to keep watching it. Probably he's a grump and I think it does get me down, but like I'm more sensitive to negativity than a lot of people and it's hilarious negativity. And so I think a lot of people would love that.
Yeah. Hey, Cheryl,
Hey, what?
we've got something really cool happening right now.
Yeah.
So you know how we've been in lockdown?
Yeah, yes, Ryan,
Stay-at-home
I
orders?
know. I know.
Well, things are starting to open up again.
That's true.
Things are
Not
starting to open up
everything
again.
and not
No,
all at
not
once,
everything.
which is probably good, but
It's
they are
yes.
opening up again.
Things are starting to open up again. And we've been doing the Wish You'd Stay Home for way more weeks than I think we originally thought we would when we started.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's funny listening back because we've recorded these in advance
Yep.
and we're like, man, it's really tough. And I mean, it has been tough, but yeah, we're like, you guys don't even know. Yeah, we did 10 weeks of Wish You'd Stay Homes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's definitely more than I thought. 10 weeks of Wish You'd Stay Homes. Wow. Well, this episode is coming out in July. It is not July right now.
No,
for
it's
us.
not.
It's just started to be June
Mm-hmm.
for us. But hopefully by the time this episode comes out, things will be even more open than they're starting to be now. So I think, Cheryl, it's time for us to say goodbye to the Wish You'd Stay Home and say welcome back to the Wish You Were Here.
Yay! Oh, that's fun. I'm
Are you
excited.
okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, the Wish You Were Here is a chance for each of us to highlight a cool travel attraction from all the different places that we've been. It's just one cool thing. It could be a restaurant. It could be a museum. It could be just a thing on the side of the road that is really cool. Maybe a big blue whale that you can walk through. I don't know. But it's just a highlight travel attraction, kind of like a little postcard that says, hey, this was cool. Wish you were here. So, Cheryl, what would you like to do for your Wish You Were Here this week?
I would like to share about a park in Northern California, and I'm trying to figure out if it's a national park or not. I don't think it is, but I think it is maybe a protected area of some sort called Point Reyes.
Okay.
So it is north, just a little bit of the Bay Area, and almost straight west of Sacramento. Not quite, a little south of that, but so kind of in that area. And specifically, what I love at Point Reyes is the lighthouse. So I love a lighthouse. They're so fun to visit. I mean, obviously, like a lot of times they're in gorgeous locations on really beautiful coastlines. So that's fun. The buildings are gorgeous, and it's just fun to visit them. So this one is a bit of a hike down getting to it, which is also pretty unique. I think was it Kyle and Kristen that were talking about how hiking in a canyon is weird because you go down first and then up. So that's like this, or you start by going down the staircase. But it is just beautiful along this like really rocky Northern Californian coastline to go out to this Point Reyes lighthouse. So go there, and maybe you can right now.
Maybe you can right now.
That would be really cool. So that's mine.
Awesome.
How about you, Ryan?
Mine, I don't know if you can actually go to right now because it's a little bit more international, but it's been a while since I've done an observatory. So I clearly need to do another observatory, don't you think?
Probably.
Yep. I would like to do the Sydney Observatory.
Ooh.
And it was super fun. Obviously, it's in Sydney, Australia. When I went down there in 2012 for the total solar eclipse. Unfortunately, the night that we went, it was raining. So we didn't really get to see a lot of stars through their telescope. But they did point it at something in the city, which was cool. But they have quite a few really cool, just kind of astronomical artifacts that obviously I'm an astronomy guy, so that gets me excited. One of the things that happened at the Sydney Observatory that's really cool is that's where they observed a transit of Venus, which I don't know if you're familiar with what that means or not.
No. I know what Venus is.
Yes. So what is Venus?
It's a planet
in
our solar system.
Correct. Yes. Very good. And think of a transit as an eclipse. It's like an eclipse, except of a planet instead of the moon. And so Venus will sometimes lines up just right. And actually Mercury can do this as well, so that it passes between the sun and the earth. And so if you can look at the sun, which by the way, you shouldn't do under normal circumstances, you can actually see the little tiny dot of the planet appear to move across the disk of the sun.
Really?
Yep. And
So
that's called a
obviously that's going to be
transit.
significantly smaller than seeing the moon, which just covers the sun.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah.
So this is
It's
just a
definitely
little
smaller.
dot on the sun. It looks like it's on the
Yes.
sun. Wow.
Exactly right. And so it looks like in 1874, there was a fairly major transit of Venus, and the Sydney Observatory was able to do that. And what they can do is they can use that to make measurements and calculate the size of things and distances of things in the solar system. And since they don't
Wow.
happen super often, it's kind of a big deal when they happen. And you have to do them in different locations on Earth in order to compare measurements. And so it was kind of a cool place that this happened. They've got the setup of the telescope and how they had all these different things to do their calculations and stuff. And it was really cool. And then they also have a planetarium show, you know, where they project the stars on the night sky. But one of the things that was really cool is, of course, you're in the Southern Hemisphere. So they're showing you some Southern Hemisphere constellations. And also they shared some different mythologies of some of the constellations that appear in both hemispheres. For example, the
Oh.
constellation Orion, which I think most people are pretty familiar with.
Yeah,
And
I'm
most people
familiar
are
with
aware
his
of
belt.
exactly the belt, the 3 stars. Well, in at least one Aboriginal culture, that's actually a canoe with 3 people riding in the canoe.
Oh, cute.
And there's this whole story, and I don't remember the story, unfortunately, but of what they do and stuff. So it's really cool to hear some, you know, things about new constellations, but also some of those constellations that happen because they're seasonal, and how a different culture interpreted those differently than what we normally
Cool.
hear from the, you know, Greek and Roman stuff that we typically hear. So Sydney Observatory, it's very cool. It's up on a hill. It's in Sydney. You should go see it.
Love it.
Okay. You want to go to Sydney now?
I mean, I already did.
Oh, okay.
So yes, I still do.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, Cheryl, I think that's all we have for this episode.
Yep.
I think people should probably follow us on social media, don't you?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I thought you
I might
endorse
even
that.
post a picture of me with the dolphin.
Ooh, that would be super cool.
Yeah.
That would be very cool. They can follow us at TimWy Podcast. That's TMWY for Take Me With You Podcast. We are on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
You can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com and send us a suggestion of a travel show that we should watch. Maybe, do you know any comedy travel shows? Because I think that might be our jam. And
think
so
so.
we would love to hear, what are we missing? And also just tell us, what are you a grump about?
So many things, Cheryl. I think the real question is, what are you a grump about?
Ooh, what am I a grump about? Scary movies, being scared, negative pop out at you surprises. I don't
See,
get
I
just
wouldn't
like
even say
scared.
that you're
I
a
get
grump, though. You
ooh,
just don't
I
like
get
them.
like all kinds of angry about it though. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. You can also call us and leave us a voicemail at 406-763-8699, also known as 406-POD-TIMWY. We would love it if you would rate and review our podcast, share about it on social media, and subscribe to make sure that you do not miss an episode.
As always, thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the awesome artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth is Something. And thank you to Erica Corbin for the use of her song Round the Globe. You can listen to Erica's music wherever music is sold or streamed.
That's all we got for An Idiot Abroad this week, but come back next week for our next travel show. And until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you.
Can we get a sailboat chasing down the sunset as we float round and round the globe? Salty air and balmy nights, guided only by the lights above, and a little love. Oh, the world is out there waiting to explore, and all our troubles here won't pretend to be